Holy sports ball, Batman. Another sports game review on this channel of all places, what gives? Hey, when you come across an Atari 7800 game for dirt cheap, you don't pass on that opportunity even if said game is outside the usual wheelhouse. Anywho. One-on-One Basketball, released in 1987 for the Atari 7800 Pro system, and an adaptation of the 1983 Apple II game of a similar name from Electronic Arts, is exactly what it says on the tin. A one-on-one basketball session between two of the greats in the sport, Julius Dr. J. Irving and Larry the Bird Bird, who would also appear a year later in another one-on-one basketball game on NES with another black basketball player, Michael I Take Things Personally Jordan. But enough about him, we're here to play a basketball game on 7800 from 1987 that's essentially a port of a game from 1983. Oh, and it's a Super Game cartridge to boot. Oh, goody. Oh, and since we might as well mention it, meanwhile, over at the magical world of Nintendo, you had Double Dribble, which hit NES a month before One-on-One hit 7800. But on the other hand, neither Dr. J nor the Bird appear in Double Dribble, so really which one seems like the bigger deal? I am, of course, asking the wrong audience. Anyway, it's one-on-one basketball, exactly what it says on the box. You can control either Dr. J or Larry Bird, both of whom largely play the same but have slight differences to make them somewhat distinct, so it's not just a matter of who gets the white dude or who gets the black dude, which, mind you, nowadays, that's all anyone would really care about, but that's beyond my pay grade or lack thereof. Anywho, you have some other minor options to customize gameplay. 4 difficulty settings, the option to play a timed game of 4 4-minute quarters, or you could play for points. Whoever gets a set number of points wins, usually 21 or whatever the case may be. And from there, it's time for some b-ball. One-on-one basketball is a very simple, very straightforward little game, but one that does adhere to some basic rules of the sport, such as offsides, being able to call timeouts, things of that nature. Controlling your player around the court is fairly responsive for the most part, though it takes a bit to learn the subtle nuances, and being able to call timeouts with the touch of the right button is certainly a choice that I often use by accident, but otherwise it plays well enough. You don't have much in the way of game variety. It's either a timed game or play until a player hits X number of points to win. And while the game does boast 4 skill settings, like most games of this ilk, one-on-one is at its best when played with a second player. Visually speaking, one-on-one looks fairly decent by 7800 standards, what with a clean perspective, the detail on the court, and even the backboard shattering with a little janitor cursing you off. The player characters somewhat resemble the players they're supposed to represent, the animation is fairly smooth, and the slightly big heads give the game a bit of a charm and personality. All in all, not a bad looking game. In regards to sound, fairly minimal for the most part. You have an opening jingle using vintage 2600 sound processing and the sound effects to match, but at least they sound the part, or try to. The dribbling, the white crowd noise, a couple minor ticks here and there. I'd say business as usual as far as 7800 sound output is concerned. Overall, one-on-one basketball is a perfectly fine little basketball video game that's easy to pick up and play. It's straightforward, to the point. Certainly works best as a 2-player competitive game than a single-player one, but even then, it's a pretty fun romp for what it is. A throwback to a simpler time when sports games were about playing simulated sports and beating the crap out of your buddies when things weren't going your way. Good times.